So, we are in the middle of the Enlightenment, and we were looking at the philosophers, and now we're going to turn our attention to England, and I'm going to introduce you to two other figures, two more figures that are part of the Enlightenment period, and then we're going to look at how it relates to art in England. Our first is Sir Isaac Newton. You've probably heard of him before. Sir Isaac Newton means that he was knighted for his discoveries and efforts. Sir Isaac Newton stressed the importance of empirical data, which means proving by experiment and observation. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, that's obvious. Isn't that what all science is? Experiment and observation? No. For the most part, human history did not include with a mandatory or regimented experiment and observation. Instead, it was a lot of theorizing. I think it's this. No, I think it's this because, well, I just think it is. Sir Isaac Newton helped to establish the idea of a hypothesis, and then a plan, an experiment, and then observations and a conclusion. Thank you, Sir Isaac Newton. What he was pursuing was to find ration and reason and logic in the natural world. He was a mathematician. He was interested in optics. It's because of him that we understand the light prism, that white light can be broken into the rainbow Roy G. Biv. You know, we all had to memorize red, orange, green, blue, violet, indigo, or indigo violet. He was also a physicist. In fact, the three laws of motion, inertia, force is the same as mass, and that every reaction has an equal and opposite every action has an equal and opposite reaction. That's all him. Why am I bringing him up? Because in him we see in art also a pursuit to find ration and reason and logic in the natural world. It'll make sense when I show you our work of art in England. But before we look at that, here's one more. John Locke. Now, John Locke, he translated this need for rationality of the natural world into a social political world. What? What I mean is human civilization. For him, he was trying to find order and ration and logic and reason in humanity, which we know is pretty much impossible. He argued that humans were born good and that they were not cursed by the Christian religious notion of original sin. He argued that humans have natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Now, if that sounds familiar, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, those are the three principles of natural human rights that are outlined by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence. They were reading John Locke. So I'm introducing John Locke here because I want us to get a sense of the Enlightenment, bringing about these ideas that are going to brew and erupt into revolution. Now, John Locke also argued, very similar to Voltaire and Rousseau, that government is meant to protect the rights of the people. And if it doesn't, they have reason for revolution. That power was within the people, not the government. Do you hear it? If government doesn't serve the people must change the government. There is revolution brewing in these ideas. Okay, how does this relate to art? With this. This is Joseph Wright of Derby, a philosopher giving a lecture at the Orrery. And as it is explaining, here is our philosopher, or think of it like a teacher, an instructor, like me. And this teacher is presenting a discussion about the orbits, and he's using this beautiful, fantastic machine called an orrery. Here is an orrery. An orrery is a mechanical model of the solar system that's used to represent the relative positions and motions of the planets. So here in this orrery, we have our sun, and then pulling a crank or rotating a crank, it rotates the planets around the sun and their So it includes the orbits around the sun and the rotations of each planet. So what we get is an understanding of the planetary motions and explanations of things like lunar eclipses. So that is what he's demonstrating here. In the orrery, the sun is being replicated with candlelight. So the light that's illuminating the space is from the candle that symbolizes, or sorry, represents the sun. Now, he's in the middle of lecture. You can see he's pointing, and he stopped while his students are listening and taking notes. This man over here, you can see he's tucked his hat under his arm, and he's got his notes out, and he's quickly scribbling under the light. He's like, "Are you ready? Are you finished? You want some more time?" And then over here, his two other students listening, looking at the orrery. Look, he looks like he's about to ask a question. Now, there are other people in the room, but those are his three students, and they are in the various states of learning, taking notes, making connections with what they were listening to and thinking, and asking questions. Similar to what we saw with Rembrandt's Dr. Tulp. Now, there are other people in this room. This woman here, you might be thinking, Miss Cortez, she's probably a student too, right? No, she's a woman. Hello. At this time, it was understood that women had the ability to learn, but like, why would they want to get a degree in anything? All they have to do is get married and have kids. So Josephrite of Derby is including her here, not because she is a student, but because it's showing that some women have an interest in learning. Oh, what a novel idea. And then we have two young boys and a little girl. But the kids, they're just interested in the fantastic machine, right? They're just fascinated by this beautiful contraption. Now, it's called A Philosopher Giving a Lecture at an Orrery. Notice it's not a specific name for the lecturer or the philosopher. It's not a specific title for these people here. Unlike Rembrandt's anatomy lesson of Dr. Tulp, Josephrite of Derby was painting this not for a specific group or commission, but in hopes of gaining future clientele. Josephrite of Derby was an artist, but he was also a enthusiast of the sciences, and he created this in an effort to attract future clients by having the beautiful orrery displayed, and I'll come back to this one, and the amazing amount of detail. What he was hoping was to attract future people to be like, oh, they were all at a science club, like listening to a lecture, and then they'd be like, oh, you painted this? Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to hire you to paint something else for me. So it isn't the same kind of direct commission like we saw with the anatomy lesson of Dr. Tulp. The symbolism here, though, was beautiful, and I like this image to help me remind me about the light. So in this image, we can see this beautiful burst of light from the center of the orrery. We know that's the sun, and we can call this technical term for this extreme, murky, muddy with the extreme light. What is that? Tenebrism. So we have tenebrism, which gives us this drama, but it also adds to, well, the idea of learning, because it's a dark room and the sun is illuminating the space with the candlelight, and that candlelight is hitting everybody in the eye, right? So they're being visually enlightened, right? The light is coming upon their faces. They're being enlightened by the sun. But enlightenment, that's also a term we use for knowledge. To be enlightened, to expel the unknown, to expel the darkness. So this candlelight here is also symbolizing the idea of knowledge spreading, enlightening our minds. And every one of them is hit by that light. Then you might be asking, well, why did he not show us the light? Well, if this light is knowledge, is it possible to know everything in the world? No. So he hides the source of the light. He obscures the origin of all knowing, of knowledge. So he's giving us this symbolic representation of education, of knowledge, of understanding, while still understanding or still acknowledging that it's not possible to know everything. And so there's this beauty in the unknown and the hiding and revealing or enlightening of our minds. Isn't that lovely? Now, I like Joseph Rudd of Derby, and I wanted to show you one more, just one more. Here it is. This is called An Experiment on a Bird in the Air Pump. What? Okay. Another painting that was made to encourage scientists to hire him for commissions. We see a scientist, we'll just call him a scientist, and he's here giving a demonstration, and nice use of a light behind this. I don't know what this is. Some embalmed heart or something. There's some kind of a flame back there that's illuminating the space. Okay, yeah. Enlightenment, knowledge. Okay. But what's the knowledge and what's happening? Well, we see this little guy back here. He's got a bird cage and he's pulling on a curtain to open the window, and we have this moment where a moon is peeking through the clouds. We have this tension of, is the moonlight coming in or is it disappearing behind the clouds? And this is echoing this moment of life and death in this glass air pump. What? The scientist here is demonstrating this phenomenon called oxygen. Phenomenon may not be the correct word, but at this time, people did not understand that what we're breathing, like clear stuff, there's something in it that we need. And this contraption here is a vacuum, and it's pulling out all of the air, aka oxygen, out of this glass orb. There's a lid at the top, and a bird has been put inside of this glass orb, and the lid put back on top, and then he pumped out all the air, and the bird has suffocated. It's fell into the bottom of this glass, and you can see the little girls are like, oh no, oh no. I know you might be thinking, this is terrible, but he's just about to lift the lid. He's going to lift up the lid, and then the air, the oxygen will come back into this space, and then the bird will revive. This is that play on life and death that we see happening with the moon. So what we have here is another idea of enlightenment, and I like to show this because it's showing us the idea of oxygen. Big deal, Miss Cortez, whatever. It is a big deal. Because once we understand things like oxygen, we can understand things like combustion. And combustion is what drives things like steam engines or your car. So we need to understand these basic elements in order to understand and create new inventions. So what we have here is something quite interesting. And of course, the tenebrism. Look at this dramatic. Oh, and the dad saying, "It's okay. See, he's going to open it up, and the bird's going to come out. It's going to be okay." And again, various forms of, interesting. Yes. Isn't it beautiful? Oh, here's my detail. Mm. Fantastic.